Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On that theme, Mr. Tolman, has geo-tracking been used for political purposes? I mean, I think about 12 years ago, we know the IRS specifically targeted conservatives. We know that the FBI targeted the conservative presidential campaign. And as Mr. Goodlatte pointed out in his testimony, the FBI has conducted 3.4 million warrantless searches. Homeland Security tried to form a disinformation governance board just a few months ago, and of course the DOJ, as we speak, is currently targeting moms and dads who show up at school board meetings. So I want to know if this kind of data, geolocation, has been used in a political manner as well.
There's no question that it has, Mr. Jordan. I think you highlight one important aspect of this, and that's who is in power focuses on who their adversaries are. And we see that DOJ does that, and they have done that. It's especially concerning when you view its use in connection with the secrecy of FISA and the other ability that they have to justify what decisions they make. I mean, I'm aware of an individual who received a knock on the door because he was in Washington, D.C. on January 6th. He did not go in the Capitol, was not there for the rally. But he was contacted by an FBI agent because he was in Washington, D.C. on that day.
Didn't even attend the rally, but just happened to be in the capital city, his capital city, that his tax dollars pay for.
That's correct.
And yet he had a knock on the door and had to answer a few questions from the FBI.
That's correct. There's no other way that they could have known that information but for the digital footprint that he left with his phone.
And would you agree, Mr. Tolman, that Mr. Nadler's bill is a good step in the right direction to begin to deal with this problem?
It absolutely is. I think it's encouraging that it's bipartisan on this particular issue because there's nothing more important right now than reining in government potential abuse.
Let me just go down the line. Maybe I'll start with our witnesses here in person. Do you have similar, because I also have concerns about facial recognition technology and how that can be used. Do you have similar concerns, Ms. Goyton?
About facial recognition technology? Absolutely. I think that is one of the scariest technologies out there because it could wipe out any form of anonymity that we have in our society. And we have seen the way it's been abused in countries like China that use this technology to track and essentially persecute the Uyghurs, a Muslim minority in that country. We also know that it doesn't work very well for people of color and seniors and women, and so
huge percentage of that where they're off, they're wrong when we're talking about African Americans and other minority groups.
And people have been falsely arrested in front of their children.
We were working in a bipartisan way with Chairwoman Maloney on trying to get some legislation last Congress, and unfortunately didn't get it done. But I hope we did. Mr. Goodlatte, I assume you shared the same concerns.
Absolutely. And again, going back to the question that Mr. Issa had, the difference between the broader scope here and the narrower scope of this legislation is those other entities, corporations, governments outside the United States, we should address those, absolutely. But they cannot pound on your door, knock it down, arrest you, prosecute you, imprison you, fine you, tax you, regulate you. Only government can do that, and that's why this legislation is unique and ought to be
it's called
taken up.
It's called the Fourth Amendment. Yeah, exactly. Ms. Lambden.
Yeah, I agree with everything everybody said, and I would add that that's one of the reasons why it's so important to also make sure that the large data brokers are included, like not just the facial recognition and geospatial geolocation data brokers, because one of my fears is that if we focus on facial recognition, then the facial recognition companies will just sell their data to one of the major data brokers and it'll still find its way into the government. So I think that...
No, we got to stay ahead. I mean, I remember a few years ago I was concerned about the Stingray technology. The IRS had bought this technology which allowed this device to function like a cell tower. Now that's outdated and they're way past that. So we don't know what's coming next. So yeah, we got to make sure we design it right. But this is certainly important legislation that needs to happen. With that, Mr. Chairman, I would yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Mr. Johnson of Georgia.